is James Parson, and I'll be doing my speech on the history of the newspaper. And this is my audience, Lynn, Evan, Cassie, and Sarah. The history of the newspaper is an exciting period of human knowledge going back for about 5 centuries. In Renaissance Europe, handwritten letters were circulated privately amongst merchants, passing along information about everything from wars and economic conditions to social customs and even human interest pieces. The first printed forerunners of the newspaper appeared in Germany in the 1440s in forms of news pamphlets or broadsides, often highly sensationalized in content. Some of the most famous of these reports were the reports of the atrocities against Germans in Transylvania, perpetrated by a sadistic Valvid named Vlad Dracul, who became the Count Dracula of the later folklore. In the English-speaking world, the earliest predecessors of the newspaper were currentors, were small news pamphlets produced only when a worthy event took notice and occurred. The first successfully published title was the Weekly News of 1662. It was followed in the 1640s and 50s by a number of different titles of a similar newsbook format. The first true newspaper in English was the London Gazette of 1666. For a generation, it was the only officially sanctioned newspaper, though many periodical titles were printed by the century's end. In America, the first newspaper appeared in Boston in 1960. It was entitled Public Occurrences, Publics being spelled with P-U-B-L-I-C-K. Published without any authority, it was immediately suppressed, and the publisher was arrested, and all copies were destroyed. Indeed, it remained forgotten until 1845, when the only known surviving example was discovered in a British library. The first successful newspaper was the Boston Newsletter. It was begun by the postmaster John Campbell in 1704. Although it was heavily subsidized by the colonial government, the experiment was a near failure and had very limited circulation. 2 more papers made their appearance in the 1720s in New York and Philadelphia, and the 4th estate slowly became established on the new continent. By the eve of the Revolutionary War, some of about 2 dozen newspapers were circulating through all the colonies, although Massachusetts, New York, and Pennsylvania would remain the center of America's printing for many years. Articles in colonial papers, brilliantly conceived by revolutionary propaganda, were a major influence by the public opinion in America from reconciliation from England to its full potential of independence. At war's end in 1783, there were about 43 newspapers in print. The press played a vital role in the affairs of the new nation, and many newspapers were started representing all shades of political opinion. The no-holds-barred style of the early journalists represented the no-holds-barred style of journalism is much of a liberous, by modern standards, reflected the rough and tumble political life of the Republic as rival factions jostled for power. The ratification of the Bill of Rights in 1791 added a latest guarantee of the freedom of press, and America's newspapers began to take a central role in national affairs. Growth continued in every state. By 1814, there were about 346 newspapers. In the Jacksonian populist 1830s advances in printing and paper-making technology led to an explosion in the newspaper growth, and the emergence of the penny press came about. It was now possible to produce and sell a paper for only a penny. This, for a whole subscription a year, would be a laborer's paycheck for over a whole week. This sudden cheap availability, interesting reading material, and significant stimulus to the achievement of the nearly universal literacy is now taken for granted in America. Thank you.